Hey everyone, it's Cappy. Welcome to Beyond the Plate. This is a podcast where we sit down with the world's culinary elite to explore their journey into the food industry and the social impact they have made in their community. Today's guest is Chef Michael Symon. This episode is made possible with the help of our friends at Keurig. Keurig coming in hot. Haha, get it? With the new limited edition Love Blend. It's a collection of 3 craft roasted blends co-created in collaboration with 5 local roasters across America. More on them throughout the season. I gotta be honest, some people say I'm a coffee snob. I don't think I'm a coffee snob. I just like pretty decent coffee. And by pretty decent, I like a really good cup of coffee. This Love Blend is it. I'm telling you, it comes in light, medium, and dark roasts. Besides Keurig being convenient, the quality's there, everybody. I mean, they worked with these small roasters, so they really had their eye on the prize, if you will. I really encourage you to check these out. The first day that I tried these, I had 3 cups of it before noon. I don't know if that was a good idea. I think it was because all of them were delicious. I think I'm a fan of the medium roast, to be honest, but I'll go back and do another test. Anyway, here's what I also love about the limited edition Love Blend. When you order the Keurig Love Blend, proceeds from your purchase go back to support the 5 roasters that came together to create them. Talk about supporting local. Bravo, Keurig. Also, these K-Cup pods are recyclable. Check locally, as they are not recyclable in all communities. To learn more about the limited edition Keurig Love Blend and their 5 roasters, and to order product, holidays coming up, hint, hint, coffee lovers, please visit Keurig.com/loveblend and follow them on social media at Keurig. Keurig, we thank you. Today's guest is a chef. He's a restaurateur, TV personality, author, philanthropist, and the list goes on and on. You may know him from his time on The Chew or one of his many Food Network shows or one of his many great restaurants around the country, be it Cleveland, Detroit, Atlantic City, wherever you may have dined. Michael Symon is truly one of the nicest and kindest guys in the industry. He's extremely talented. You most likely know him from his laugh, which you can spot or hear, I should say, anywhere. This is a great episode. He goes deep into how food shaped him as a kid through his family. When I think of Michael Symon, I think of one thing. We did an incredible fundraiser for the charity that I work on with Rachel Ray. It was a one-night event, a very high-end event, if you will, but we brought in 5 high school kids from around the country, and Michael Symon literally spent days with them, taking them to farmers markets and different purveyors around New York City and creating this whole menu. Definitely an experience these kids will never forget, but this is the kind of guy that he is. He's extremely giving. He's very philanthropic. His foundation does an incredible amount of work in Cleveland. They have been doing it since before COVID, but have especially stepped up during the past many, many months. Before we go, I do want to mention we have some awesome new merch for everybody, which you can find in a link in your podcast player, or you could go to beyondtheplatemerch.com. We have some super soft tees and hoodies and different styles of hats and beanies as well, so make sure you check them out. And without any further ado, please enjoy this episode as we go beyond the plate with Chef Michael Symon. Hey, Chef, I want to do a quick audio test to adjust my levels. Please name 10 cuts of pasta for me while I do that.
Oh, geez. Okay. Rigatoni, penne, tagliatelle, farfalle, gnocchi, capellini, did I say fettuccine? Fettuccine, linguine, gnocchi, pappardelle.
Got it. Thank you. All right, man. So my first Chef Michael Symon experience, this was crazy. When I lived in New York, I used to write down everywhere where I ate for the first long amount of time. And it was at Perea in 2007.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
And here's what I remember that I had: Greek dips, crispy pork with beets, honey, and pistachios, fried zucchini with feta, roast chicken with basil, eggplant, and whipped feta, and Greek fries.
Wow, you have a good memory.
It was good.
Thank you. That was a fun little consulting gig.
Yeah. Do you share one of your most memorable meals, whether it was dining out or something you cooked at home? or something someone cooked for you?
Gosh, for one reason, one of the most memorable. So when we opened Lola in 1997, and during that time, Michael Ruhlman was writing Soul of a Chef. So it was with myself. He featured 3 chefs. It was Michael Polson, Thomas Keller, and myself. So Thomas was in Cleveland a lot when that book was being written because Michael Ruhlman was also working on the French Laundry Cookbook. And so Thomas ate at Lola several times before Liz and I had a chance to get to the French Laundry. And French Laundry, I believe, opened a year before we did, roughly. And I even thought about going out there to work with Thomas. I'd known him prior to work with Thomas for the opening of French Laundry. And then Liz and I decided to open our own restaurant. And so Thomas had been to Lola several times, and he kept saying, you guys got to get out. You got to get out. We were working 7 days a week. And we got married about a year after Lola had opened. And we decided to take a 3-day honeymoon because that's all we could take. And we went to Napa Valley and went to French Laundry. And French Laundry had probably been open about probably around 2 years at that point. And the French Laundry Cookbook wasn't out yet. And it was like a famous restaurant, but Thomas wasn't as famous as he became after the book and stuff came out. And Liz and I went, we sat down, and we were staying at a little B&B next door in Yountville. And Thomas came out to the table, and the waiter's like, he never comes out to the table. And I'm like, oh, okay. I said, we've known each other quite a long time. And he said, do you mind if I just cook for you for your wedding present? I said, gosh, no, that'd be spectacular. So we proceeded to have 36 courses, and nothing that each course was 2 bites. But nothing that either of us had was the same thing. So we had 72 different bites of food over about 5.5 hours. And I remember Liz and I got back to the B&B afterwards. It was like literally, 500 feet. And we were laying in bed and we were writing down everything we had. And I'm like shaking my head, and she's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I suck. I am just not a good chef. Like this is other level kind of stuff, it was like, oh my God. And, and then the French Laundry Cookbook came out, and Thomas continued to get more, French, I think 2 years following that, French Laundry was named best restaurant in the world for like 3 or 4 straight years. And like, I remember sometimes because people are how people are, people are like, oh, he's so overrated. And I'm like, really? I said, tell me your 72 best dishes. Because when I went there for dinner, he did 72 different preparations of food, and not a sauce, a vegetable, a starch, or a protein repeated itself. So, if you could name me 72 dishes right now, have at it.
Have you been back since that experience?
Yeah, I've been back a couple times since then, and every experience has been great there because it's a spectacular restaurant, but nothing was like that one. Also, I would say, it was the combination of just the amount of precision and just the whole experience. And it was our honeymoon, and we hadn't had a day off in over a year. But also in the same year that Lola opened, Mark Vetri opened Vetri in Philly. We've been friends, for like close to 25 years now, Mark and I have. And the first time I went to Vetri, I'd never eaten Italian food like that. Not in Italy, not anywhere. It just blew me away. Liz and I went there and probably did about 6 or 7 courses of pasta. And, every one was just insane, just absolutely insane.
Let's talk about the city that Michael Symon helped build, culinarily speaking, the CLE. Where'd you grow up? And I want you to take us inside the Symon family kitchen.
Okay.
Who's there? What'd you guys eat? What was talked about? All that stuff.
My mom and dad are both from outside of Pittsburgh. My mom lived in Pittsburgh until she graduated from high school. My dad moved to Cleveland. My grandparents moved my dad to Cleveland when he was 8 or 9. And he grew up on the east side of Cleveland in Cleveland Heights. And that's where my grandparents lived. And that's where I was born. And then my parents moved to the west side of Cleveland when I was like 7, 8 years old, something like that, because where my dad worked at Ford Motor Company was a 10-minute commute from the west side and an hour commute from the east side. But then Cleveland's weird. It's like, it's a very divided city. Like, it's like, are you an east sider or are you a west sider? And I kind of grew up in both because my grandparents lived east even after we moved out of there. So I was always at my grandparents' house on the weekends because my dad worked midnights. So I kind of was, I guess, fortunate enough to grow up on both sides of town. And, growing up, so food from my mom's side of the family is really interesting because my mother is Greek and Sicilian. And her mother is Sicilian and her father was Greek. Her father passed away when she was 12. And until that time, she never knew she was Sicilian. They only spoke Greek in the house. My yaya only cooked Greek food. I guess the story goes is when my papu was dating my yaya, they found out she wasn't Greek and they kicked him out of the Greek community. So then my yaya, who only had a 8th grade education, taught herself how to cook, read, and write Greek. So as time passed, he had his Greek friends over and my yaya cooked dinner and spoke to him in Greek and they accepted him back in the community. So my mom was only allowed to speak Greek in the house and they only ate Greek food and all that stuff until my papi passed when she was 12. And then, the Italian food started kind of popping back up again, the Sicilian food. So my mom really good cook with like traditional Greek and Sicilian type dishes. Now, if you ask her to grill a steak, it's a hot mess. Like she can make pasticcio, moussaka, baklava, great pastas, all that kind of stuff. Grill a steak, it's over. Like it's just something just disconnects in her brain. And then we were big. We never went out to eat as a kid. We always ate at home. And then my dad's side of the family is Eastern European. It doesn't even exist anymore. It's Ruthenia. It was up in the Carpathian Mountains. It's now part of the Ukraine. So my dad's side of the family was a lot of Eastern European foods. Borscht, pierogi, cabbage and noodles, all those kind of things, which is what a lot of Cleveland is. That Eastern European food is really prevalent in Cleveland, like halushki and stuffed cabbage. When my mom was cooking, it was always Greek or Sicilian food. But when we went to my dad's parents' house, it was always very Eastern Euro. And when I would stayed with my dad's parents on the weekends a lot. And so my grandparents, they lived in Cleveland Heights. So I go over there and my grandfather was a pipe fitter. He worked Monday through Friday. And my grandmother worked at Higbee's in downtown Cleveland, which, was a clothing store. So I go over to my grandparents and then on Saturdays, we get in my grandfather's car. He always had like a big old Lincoln. And we would go downtown. We'd have to pick up my grandmother from work and we'd go downtown about 2 hours early and we'd go to the West Side Market and he'd buy all the crazy Eastern European food. And then we'd pick up my grandmother and he'd come home and cook, and they both cooked, but my grandfather was really a spectacular cook. Like, the pierogi dough for the beef cheek pierogi at Lola is his dough recipe. He's the one that taught me like how to make sausage and how, all that kind of stuff I really learned from him as a kid.
How old were you when you were picking up on this?
God, I was in the kitchen a lot as a kid. I would say, I remember being in the kitchen like under 10, but I really don't remember learning stuff till, my early teenage years.
Do you remember like a first dish you made?
The first things that I learned how to make I learned how to make and form pierogi, because it was always like a big production at my grandparents' house. And then my mom taught me how to make baklava. Those were like the two dishes I learned how to make before anything else.
That's awesome. Did you have any jobs outside the kitchen?
Well, basic, it was, my parents, we worked. So, my dad at Ford, he basically worked 7 days a week and he worked midnights until I was in high school. So, he worked a ton. So, I was in charge of mowing the lawn, taking care of outside, rototilling the garden, and a lot of times I did it with my grandfather. He would come over and help. But yeah, we weren't, my sister and I weren't raised like, oh, we'll take care of it. Like we took care of it, so it was like, we were the cleaning service, the landscapers, and then I had, in my family growing up, it was like, you work, that's what you do. I mean, I had 2 paper routes when I was in like 7th and 8th grade through high school. In Cleveland back then, there was the Plain Dealer, which was the morning paper. And then the paper got delivered in the afternoon. It was called the Cleveland Press. So I would deliver the Plain Dealer before school and then get home from school and deliver the press until I could get like a regular job.
And the first kitchen job, Geppetto's?
Geppetto's, yeah. I think I was 15, 16.
Did you learn anything there?
Yeah, it was a great, it was a friend of mine's parents' restaurant. And, they did ribs and they did barbecue ribs and they did pizza. It was ribs. It was a ribs and pizza joint. And I learned, some early stuff about barbecue there. And, back then they ended up like franchising it where they got like, I think like 20 or so of them around Northeast Ohio. There's only 1 or 2 left now. But, the ribs would come in raw, you'd season them. And then the pizza dough, we would make in house. And, so I learned some really basic, good cooking techniques there.
Was that a job that made you want to pursue cooking more?
Yeah. So what happened to me is I was a decent wrestler, and my junior year in high school, I really mauled my arm. I had a plate, 14 screws, and I dislocated my elbow all in one thought. So that you have 2 bones coming up your forearm. You might even be able to see there's still a pretty good zipper there. So yeah. You have 2 bones going up, 1 compound fractured. That was the easy break. The other one shattered. And then my elbow went up to here. They and it happened in a match. So I got a plate and I think 13 screws in the shattered bone, put the compound one back, put my elbow back in place. And they said, you're probably not going to wrestle again. They put me in a cast after the surgery. It was the same doctor that did the stuff for the Browns back then. I was in a cast for about 6 months. I get the cast off. They told me that I shouldn't wrestle. And I said to my dad, I've been wrestling since I've been 8 years old, 7 years old. He's like, how does it feel? I said, it feels pretty good. He goes, just see how it feels. And so I started working out and practicing and wrestling again. And I woke up one morning and I go wake up my dad. And I'm like, something's wrong. He's like, what do you mean? And my arm was like double the size. And they bring me in and I had cracked the plate in my arm. So they had to go back and reset it. And then I was in a cast for another year. So I was in essentially for a year and 8 months. It was like 6 months. Then I wasn't in one for 2 months. And another year I was in a cast. All my scholarship opportunities and stuff had kind of diminished. And I came from a very blue collar, middle class family. And so I started working in restaurants. That's why I took a job at Geppetto's, was to start saving money to help pay for college, and fell in love with the restaurant business and told my dad that I think I want to go to culinary school, and told me absolutely not. There was no Food Network back then, I was going to be a tradesman, which I still think of myself as, quite honestly. He goes, you're going to college, you're going to college. I'm like, okay. So I went to college for a semester and I got a 0.2 GPA, not a 0.2. Then my mom said, this is ridiculous. You're letting them go to culinary school. And my father's like 6'3", my mom's 4'11", but you don't want to piss off my mom. So she was like, the Greek Sicilian blood was going. And so, off to culinary school I went, and that's it,
So I think you said flash forward ahead, 1997, you opened your first restaurant with your then fiance, now wife.
Correct.
Liz. How'd you guys manage to survive that together? Well,
we met in the restaurant business in 1990 when I moved back from New York. She says 91, I said 90, but either 90 or 91, depending on who's telling the story. But since I'm telling the story, I'm going to say 1990. So I graduated from culinary school, and then I moved back from New York, and I took a job at this little great Mediterranean restaurant outside of Cleveland called Players, and a little 38-seat, 40-seat boutique Mediterranean restaurant. And Liz, who was also a native Clevelander, but had lived in Boston, New York, and then Boston, moved back about 6 months prior to when I did, and took a job at this restaurant as a manager. And I took a job as a cook. So we met there, and we became very, very good friends when we were there, because, it was, the restaurant had been open for like 12 years. And essentially every employee there other than Liz and I had been there all 12 years. So we were like the two new kids. So, we kind of bonded on that. And as I like to tell everybody, when we met in 1990, technically she was my boss. And here we are almost 30 years later, and she still is.
There you go. Well, this is a perfect segue here, because I saw a recent beautiful Instagram post that you guys celebrated an anniversary. So my question is, what 3 words would you use to describe Liz?
3 words to describe Liz: strong, loving, and loyal.
Strong, loving, loyal. What 3 words would Liz use to describe you?
Pain in ass.
All right, everyone, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this episode.
I don't know. She's close. So it would be interesting what she would use. But like for Liz, it's like, for me, she's the loyalest person I've ever known. Like if you are, Liz is kind of shy at first, but once you get to know her and like you're on her team, there's nothing she would not do for the people that she loves. Her loyalty is fierce as any human I've ever met in my life, and she's tough, but she's still very loving, I wonder what she would use, the 3 words she would use to describe me. I'm gonna ask her when she comes back in the house. That'll be actually funny.
Yeah. Okay, so Lola, 1997. What was the dream with your first restaurant?
So when we opened our first restaurant, it was actually kind of funny. The dream is both of us had spent time in New York. Liz had also spent time in Boston. The restaurants, there were some restaurants in Cleveland at the time. Some of them had been around forever, but there was nowhere in Cleveland that was like, there was either fine dining or like a cafe. There was no place where like you could get really good food, but you didn't have to wear a shirt and a tie and get dressed up, And when we opened Lola, we wanted to open, like in retrospect, it was a really stupid plan in the sense of like, let's open a restaurant that like waiters and servers and cooks want to eat at. Well, that sounds good on paper, but it's like they're working when you're open. So, but like when Lola first opened,
I'll be busy on Mondays.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So when Lola first opened, it was open till 1:00 every night during the week and 2:00 on weekends. And we did a tremendous amount of business with restaurant people, like an insane amount, from 11 till close every night. And that in turn pushed, like, it was one of those things that we didn't know was going to work this way, but it did. And, the servers would go back to their job and customers would come in and the customers say, "Oh, where do you like to eat?" And they go, "Lola," And so then it exploded. But the premise of the restaurant when we opened was, we wanted to do Midwestern cuisine because we didn't feel, we felt that there was California cuisine and this and that, but we didn't feel that there was food that really represented the Midwest in the United States at the time. So we really focused on taking dishes that a Clevelander or a Midwesterner was very comfortable with and maybe using ingredients with it that they're not comfortable with. The beef cheek pierogi is like the perfect example. It's like it's been on the menu since day one. It was like maybe people weren't willing to eat beef cheek in Cleveland almost 25 years ago, but they know what a pierogi is. So when we first put it on the menu, beef cheek pierogi, it was still a tough sell. And then we changed the name of it to pot roast pierogi, and we sold like 100. So it was that. It was taking that Midwestern cuisine, or what we felt was Midwestern cuisine, and really pushing the envelope on that. And then, Liz did all the beverage programs and stuff. And basically with the wines, she would just, regardless of what the wine was at the time, she'd buy the bottle and add $10 or something. It was something of that ilk. So we wanted to make it like, just a little bit more fun and affordable for, at the time, the younger clientele that wanted a place to call their own, but maybe at that time couldn't necessarily afford to eat at some of these highfalutin places. So, when we opened Lola out of the gate, now granted, this is 1997, I don't think there was an entree on the menu under $20. or over $20. And all the wines were only marked up minimally. So, we just, it was the most interesting dynamic in that restaurant. And you could have never planned to create it. It just kind of happened. But like, I remember one night, we're sitting there and fortunately we were packed. I mean, just, you couldn't get in for 6 months, and it stayed like that till Corona, to be quite honest with you. But like in the early years, the first 6 months we were open, it was an open kitchen, and like Liz would expedite and I'd cook, and I'm like on the line, and she goes, "Look at this." And I look into the dining room, and sitting at one table is Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails. And at the table next to him is Dick Jacobs, who owns the Cleveland Indians. So, you got Trent, who's Trent. And, Dick at the time was like 85 years old and in his blue leisure suit. And they're like having a great time, just bullshitting with each other and talking. And I'm like, and Liz is like, man, it's like, it was lightning in a bottle. It was just like, we would get such a incredibly diverse clientele, from young to old to black to white. It didn't matter. It was like, we would just get this giant melting pot of people, and everyone was just really happy to be there and having a good time. And it just worked, it just worked.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you've opened a lot of restaurants since then. Yeah. Closed some, opened plenty. What do you love most about opening restaurants?
God, I love opening restaurants so much.
Do you?
I love it. Now, we're all different with this. Like there's 3 partners. There's myself, there's Liz, and there's Doug. And we all have different responsibilities through the opening. But I love when there is a whole new staff. And like my favorite part is the week or so leading right before the restaurant opens. Everything before that makes me crazy. Like Doug deals with all that shit. Like, this wall's not painted right. Like Liz does all the design and gets everything going. Doug manages the contractors once it gets going. I hate all that stuff. I hate it. But what I love is a week prior to opening, 2 weeks prior to opening, all the new staff comes in, and we usually bring some of our, we still have staff from the original restaurant. So we bring, those people that have been with us for 20 plus years to help with the openings. And we start doing the tastings and going over every dish. And so like I get to go in the kitchen and work with these young cooks and really get into their head and see what they're passionate about. And then you get to take that food and bring it out to the front of the house and talk to them about the dish and watch them eat it and see them get excited. And I those 10 days to 2 weeks, whatever, to me are like the most magic part of a restaurant opening.
How do you deal with or handle obstacles in your career?
I've gotten better, I think, at handling them as I've gotten a little bit older. When I was younger, they would frustrate me. Like I would just get frustrated. Now I just think of them as that it's just, I don't let them get me down. Like, I try to think of most obstacles as an opportunity to learn something. And, the thing that I've learned the most is when an obstacle happens, I'm like, is this something that I caused or something that is happening? But either way, you still need to learn from it and say like, all right, look, like, I don't want that to happen again. Like, what can I do so that doesn't happen again? Because that sucked. So, I don't let them aggravate me. I let them teach me, so to speak. And that's not saying I don't get aggravated. I still do, but it's a lot less frequent than when I was younger.
What aggravates you?
I'll tell you, maybe like in the kitchen, what aggravates me. So like with young cooks in the kitchen, like if you show them something, like I always say, I'll show you once, I'll show you twice. If I had to show you a third time, we got a problem, because either you're not paying attention or you're not capable or whatever it is. And if someone is struggling with something, I have no problem working through the whole process with them. If it takes them 100 times, I don't care. If the effort's there, I'll do the 100 times. So what frustrates me is when I feel that there's a lack of caring or effort, or, I tend to get aggravated with that. From a consumer standpoint, I tend to get aggravated. I don't like if someone when I was young, as a chef and someone wanted to change a dish, I used to lose my mind. I'd be like, well, like when they would be like, I don't want this sauce. I want sauce on the side. I want this way, blah, 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 blah. It used to make me insane. Like I would just be like, why do they come out to dinner? Just cook it at home, But I've learned that it's like, look, if people are coming out to eat and they want things the way they want them, and it's our job to make the customer happy. Like that's our job, So, but what makes me crazy is when a customer like will change a dish all up and then be like, I don't like this. I'm like, well, yeah, you know why you don't like it? Because you put the sauce from the salmon on the chicken with the vegetable from the pork and I could have told you it was going to taste like shit, So that aggravates me. But that doesn't happen too often.
Yeah. So you have restaurants in many cities. How do you make sure that something like your mom's lasagna is being cooked in Atlantic City, how you remember it growing up?
So we are very fortunate in the sense of we have a lot of long-term employees. And so when we have a restaurant that's in Atlantic City or in Vegas, they all have minimally one or more of an employee that's been with us for over 20 years. That's been with us long enough that they know my mom and dad very well. They've had my mom's lasagna, So like the example in Atlantic City would be Frankie Ritz, who's our GM there. Frank has worked with Liz and I for 29 years. He was a bartender at a restaurant we worked at. When we opened Lola, we made him the bartender, then became bar manager, then he became GM, then he became district manager, and now he oversees all of AC. I mean, so he's been part of my family for nearly 30 years. I mean, he knows my mom and dad very well. And like my mom used to, at Lola, my mom and Liz's mom would take reservations on the phone. They used to come in. We were closed for lunch. They would come in and they would take all the reservations. So our parents, that staff that's been with us forever, our parents know them all intimately. They were at their weddings. They were, the whole kit and caboodle. So we're able, because we've had so many loyal employees that have been with us for so long, we're able to disperse them kind of in these restaurants that maybe I can't get to, every day, obviously. And like, if something's wrong, Frank knows, like at the Borgata, like sometimes the chef will be like, I'll get a call from the chef and they'll be like, Chef, Frank said that the sauce, I'm like, dude, if Frank said it's not right, it's not right. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I know he's the GM and you're the chef technically, but if Frank said it's not right and it needs whatever, basil, it needs basil. Because he has eaten my mom's food and my food for, he's 50, he's the same age as me, 51 years old. For over half his life, he has eaten everything that I have made, my mother's made, so he knows, and in Vegas, when we opened in Vegas, Joe Swan, the chef, started working with us when he was 15 in high school. Now he's 40 years old, and he ran Mabel's and Sarah's in Vegas. Joe knows, like he knows if he tastes something, this isn't how Michael wants this. I know that,
That's amazing.
Yeah. So we've been very blessed in that manner. It's like, even with, when we do the cookbooks and stuff, my culinary director, Katie Pickens, Katie has been with Liz and I since she's been, I think, 17, so, she's been with us over 15 years. And to me, that's the secret to our success is, we have a lot of very long time loyal employees that know how we like things and they're like family to us.
What 3 words would Frankie Ritz say about you?
Big, fat, and stupid.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, him and I have been through wars. I mean,
I can imagine.
Oh my God. When we were opening Lola, we bought Lola. It was there was a restaurant there. It was a fun restaurant, kind of had a bad reputation for like crazy partying and stuff would happen after hours and all that kind of nonsense. So it had closed and went out of business. And then we had taken it over and we did, Liz and I and Frankie and some of my friends, we essentially built the restaurant ourselves. We like tore it apart and painted it and put in tile, and Liz refabricated all the chairs. Like we did everything ourselves. We did it for $140,000. When and when we got there, I don't know if it was like these guys weren't clean or it was just that was shuttered for 7 or 8 months. It had the kitchen was closed in, and we really wanted to have an open kitchen. So like Frank and I are looking at the walls, and he's like, it's just drywall. We could like rip this stuff right down, and it's not even all the way to the ceiling. And then I'm like, all right, so we don't know what we're doing. We're like, we have a dumpster outside and we're just tearing shit up basically. And Frank and I shaking the wall, ripping it out, shaking it. And it was the place, because it was closed and shuttered and not all the coolers were clean. It was gross. It was like, we're getting the wall back and forth. And Frankie's like, push it towards me, and I'm pushing it. And I hear him go, oh God. And he's like, stop pushing. And I think it's because it's getting too heavy. So I run to the other side to I'm going to help him hold it. And the wall was full of cockroaches. And they have now, mostly dead, but they have now covered Frank.
Oh, God.
And Frank has thick ass hair, like Kramer. Like I used to call him Kramer, like crazy big hair. And I'm like, oh my God. He goes, are they on me? I'm like, oh God, they're on you. Like, oh, yeah. And we dropped the wall. We ran outside. We're like, oh God, this is disgusting. It was which it took us from when we purchased it to when Lola actually opened, of all that ripping out walls and dealing with that kind of crap. It took us a year to open it from the day we purchased it. But it was, so Frank and I, we've been through some stuff. Yeah, we've been through some stuff.
I'm guessing you've described this a bunch, but I'm curious. I've seen you describe some of your food as meat-centric, yet am I correct that Liz is vegetarian?
She was a vegetarian up until the pandemic. It's like God's little gift to me. She started eating meat again.
Wow.
Yeah. So Liz was a vegetarian when I met her. And then she started eating a little bit of meat, not much. So it was a little bit of fish, a little bit of meat. And then was a vegetarian for 20 years. And for a couple of those years was a vegan, which actually in a very weird way, obviously going back to the Midwestern cuisine and where I was raised and steak and potatoes, meat is what I do. I mean, meat is what made me a famous chef.
Did she ever not push it on you, but encourage more dishes?
So here's one, it made me a better cook because it made me understand we get in prime ribeyes, we age them for 45 days, we trim them, we slice them, there's not much you got to do to make that thing delicious. The meat makes it delicious. When you're cooking vegetarian food, there's nothing to hide behind. I mean, you have to bring it with the flavor. So cooking vegetarian for Liz and vegetarian with Liz made me a better cook. And it probably was a lot healthier for me too, because a couple days a week, I would just eat vegetarian because it was easier to cook us, if one of us, the other were cooking, just to have a meal that both of us could eat. And Liz is a very good cook too. So, and she was good at cooking meat. She just didn't eat it. And then she started eating a little bit of meat here and there again with the pandemic. Nothing crazy, but it was.
How did that go down? Were you making something? She's like,
well, you know what it was? It was when the pandemic started, the day they shut down New York. I mean, you'll appreciate the story better than anyone. I was going in to the city. We were out in Long Island. I was going into the city to do Food Network Live. I called in the morning. I'm like, guys, they're like, no, we're shooting. Don't worry about it. And I used to go in once a week and I would do 5 episodes once a week. I would just do the whole, a whole day essentially. So I get through the tunnel and I get a call and it's Erica from Food Network. And she's like, they just shut down Food Network. I'm like, oh God. She's like, what do you want to do? I'm like, you know what? I'm going to, they had sent someone to drive me in. So I'm like, I'm going to go to my apartment, have a double espresso, get back in the car, head back out. And I had Olivia with me and I get back in the car and I'm like, man, I said to Eric, what are they going to do? With, Food Network Kitchen and all that kind of stuff. What? All this stuff, there's going to be no content, I text David Zasloff and I said, David, like, look, I'm heading back to Long Island. I said, Olivia is with me, who does all my social and anything that we've done, like for cookbooks and stuff. She shoots everything on her iPhone. She's great at it. I'm like, we could still produce content out of my house. He goes, give me a second. By the 2 hours, I get home. Now we're on an email with like 20 people from the Food Network trying to figure out how to make this work. And the next day, I started doing Food Network Lives on their Facebook page. And we did 50 straight days of it during the pandemic. And, it was just kind of luck, but we were like the first chef or whatever to do that. No one else had done it to that point where it was like, because we started on day one and we just were cooking out of our house. Well, when I'm teaching, it's like, I'll do a vegetarian dish here and there, but that's certainly not my wheelhouse. And it was hard all of a sudden, it was really hard to get groceries and so like I would go out and I would buy, whatever I could buy, and I'd come home and, I'd buy hopefully a week's worth, and I would just, whatever we had, I would just cook, and Liv would film it, and we'd do a dish in an hour, and people would ask questions. And so most of the stuff I was making had meat in it. Like at the grocery stores at the time, in the beginning of the pandemic, you didn't have a lot of choices when you went to the grocery store. It wasn't like it is now. It was like stuff was really picked over, and you're like, what the hell's going on? I mean, couldn't even get toilet paper, for Christ's sakes. And so Liz would, just whatever I made, she would eat. And she's like, oh, this meat isn't as bad as I remember it being.
That's funny.
And that's kind of how that started.
I'm glad you mentioned that. So I think this was kind of earlier on. You did a cook along for the New York City Wine and Food Festival at Home series, which I moderated. Actually, you did your gnocchi and bolognese, right? Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was, you had started doing some of these videos a little before that.
Yeah, I think that was a couple weeks in.
Question, when you realized the pandemic wasn't going away so soon, what role did you think you were going to play as a chef?
Well, I started doing the Facebook Live stuff out of, initially I was like, Food Network needs some content. Obviously I've been with Food Network since 98, doing stuff for them anyhow. And I'm going to be home, and but then as it started going, what I realized is it played a couple roles. I realized that it became really important. Like we were getting, I think through the course of those 50 days, we got like over 30 million views. What I realized during the course of it, because there was a discussion with them asking questions and me answering, like I think at a time where there was a lot of panic and nervousness, and people wanted to get away from the news, and it gave people an hour of comfort every day, and quite frankly, it gave me an hour of comfort every day. Like I was as stressed out as everybody else was. I mean, so it gave me like, I would write the menus, I would prep them, and Liv would shoot them, and I'd cook. So, for 5 hours a day, it would just keep my mind busy, in the midst of, oh my God, I can't see Kyle. I can't see my granddaughter. I can't see Kristen. I can't get home to make sure my mom and dad are okay. Liz's parents at the time were both in a nursing home. Our dog just died. The restaurant's closed. It was like, holy shit, this is just not, 2020 could bite me, man. And those 50 days, like, I think, like, I still get so many comments, like, thank you so much for doing that. And, what I always tell people though is, man, you're thinking me, I'm thinking you. Like it helped me. It was like, for so much of my life now, for 35 years or more of my life, the most comfortable place for me is the kitchen. So in a time that was really stressful for, America and myself, and, it put me directly in my most happy place. And, it was just me and Liz and Olivia. That was it. And our puppy that was misbehaving terribly at the time. And it just, so I think it wasn't like I didn't set out and say, I'm going to make people feel better about themselves during this pandemic and get them through. But you, as you were going through it, you realized how much it was helping everyone, because you all, and you know this, so like everything just stopped, I mean, TV shows stopped filming, studios closed down, right? So it was like normalcy just went away. And I mean, normalcy is coming back now to an extent, but I mean, it's different than it was before, but it's back. So that I was able to, give people some kind of consistency and normalcy during that time, I think was very comforting to people and very comforting to me.
You mentioned Kyle. He has Grindstone Coffee?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Grindstone Coffee and Donuts in Sag Harbor.
Last season, we sat with Danny Meyer the week that his daughter Hallie was opening Cafe Pana in New York City. And he was saying, he's like, she didn't want my help. He's like, she did it all on her own. I was like, wow, okay. So my question is, did Kyle want any advice from you or Liz?
Yes. Well, it was funny. He, when he opened, I think he wanted some advice to start, he had a vision in his head and he was following his vision and he would like make the donuts and say, taste them. He wanted opinion, I think, more than advice. But then.
Did he grow up in the restaurants?
Yeah. Yeah. He was a great student, went to school, hated it, and then was back in kind of restaurant world and worked in some French bakeries and stuff like that too, through high school and coffee shops through high school, in addition to working at Lola. So, we would taste stuff. I'd give him my opinion, blah, blah. And then he got delayed a couple times with opening, and he ended up opening in Sag Harbor the first week of August 5 years ago, which is like the busiest time you could possibly open in Sag Harbor. So they got just like the first day they opened, there were like 200 people in line, and it was insanity. And he's like, I need help. So he's like, I'm going down, man. I'm going down. So like I went in and started helping, and I'm like, holy shit, I need help. Like this is like. So at that point, I'm like, all right, screw it. I flew out my corporate chef, Derek, who's been with me 20 years, our director of culinary, Katie, and my pastry chef, Summer, and our director of operations, Brian Dybel, and my business partner, Doug. So all five of them came out and stayed with me and Liz. And wow. We all went in and basically worked August with them. And it was like man,
that's a whole series. That's a series for a show right there.
Oh my God. It was hilarious. It was the opening team we used to open 15,000 square foot restaurant in Vegas. We used to help Kyle open an 800 square foot donut shop in Sag Harbor.
Holy crap. That's like boot camp.
And we were all going down. We were going down. It was because it was like I know a little bit about pastry. I'm not a pastry chef, and we had Summer, who's, Beard Award nominated, but, she's very, like, here you go. It's perfection. Enjoy. And all of a sudden we're like, we went through 1,200 donuts. How is that humanly possible?
Crap.
So it was like us trying to learn a new gear and, it's a different kind of business, but, and it's still like, and then after we got through that, he's done everything on his own, but he's still always, he likes, I think like today he brought over he was playing around with the donut that he was making with potato flour because of all the potato farms out here that he wanted us to taste. So, now like, I think it's opinion. He wants opinion more than help, if that makes sense. Confirmation, maybe. I don't know. But he's killing it. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Good for him. That's great. All of our guests here, Beyond the Plate, give back in different ways, which is one of the main reasons that we started this and wanted to get these incredible stories out there, mainly to share what chefs do outside of the kitchen. And we have this connection dating years back from the Yummo fundraiser we did for Rachel's charity back in, was that 2007 or 2008?
Long time ago, yeah. You're old too now.
Yeah. Jesus. But that was incredible. We took 5 high school students from around, and I admire you so much for the time you took for that. I mean, we took 5 high school students from around the country and you spent like days with them
we
creating
went to
this
the
menu.
farmers markets. It was really awesome. It was really, really special.
Incredible event. And it was like the one and only fundraiser we did for the charity. So whenever everyone's like, do you guys do fundraisers? It's like, this is easy. Just talk about this one incredible event we have. So we've seen chefs like really step up, obviously, in this industry now. Are you surprised?
No, it's a service industry. I mean, this is what we do. It's like, we always laugh. It's when things get weird, this is what we do. The service industry is at its core about taking care of people, like customers, staff. I mean, that's what it's at its core. So I think when things get bad, that's what the service industry does, and look, when all this started going down, we ramped our foundation up. And, the great thing is you could only do so much as an individual or foundation, unless obviously you get support from other individuals or foundations. And we started raising money for Cleveland restaurant workers, Ohio restaurant workers.
Yeah, I wanted you to hit on that. You have the Michael D. Symon Foundation.
It's a very original name.
But share a little about that.
When the pandemic hit, Ohio, 15% of all employees in Ohio are restaurant workers. It's a massive part of the community there. And, all the restaurants closed, including ours. And we kept one, Lola started doing meals weekly for local food banks to like get food there. And then, then we realized, some people on our staff were struggling a little bit. And so we started creating meals for the staff and like little packages that they could take with them for a couple days worth of food and toiletries and things of that nature. And then Sam Lindsley, who worked for Liz, Doug, and I for 15 years, became very heavily involved in the Ohio Restaurant Association. So, Sam reached out to me and he said, we got problems, across the state and with people unemployed and they not get enough food and this and, So I'm like, all right, Sam, let's figure this out. So I did a couple things directly with them. And then I said, well, let me see if I can make my foundation activate some more things for you guys. And like the first thing we did, it was like such a silly thing, but Olivia's like, you should have a Cameo. Let's do Cameo. So I'm like, all right, I'll open a Cameo account of whatever. I think it was $100 and we're just going to donate everything to charity. And I mean, I think we, over the course of 6 months or whatever it is, we've done over 40,000 in Cameos. So that's all went to the charities. And then, I've worked a lot with charity stuff with the Cavs and, doing stuff for LeBron and the Browns and the Indians. And so I reached out to the people that I know there and they all made substantial donations to my charity. And so we continue to funnel the money from the charity currently towards restaurant employees. Like I've done a lot of charitable work over the years, Autism Speaks and, and like people like Rachel Reject. But it was like when all this started happening, I'm like, I just have to, this is what I understand the best. And, I'm watching an industry I've spent 3/4 of my life in just collapsing upon itself. And the amount of employees, restaurant employees live paycheck to paycheck. It's just the nature of the beast, some more so than others. I'm like, how could we, we're going to do our best to take care of our people, but there's still a lot more people other than our people. Like what can we do to help take care of them also? And the Ohio Restaurant Association has done a really fantastic job. And I'm proud of where our foundation is and what it was able to do during that time. Like also the stuff we were doing with the Cleveland food banks at the time. It was, what was happening with the food banks is they weren't having trouble getting food donated, but most of their workers were elderly. So they didn't have anybody to cook or serve the food. So, that's when we started using our donations and their donations to start preparing meals and dropping it off at the food banks. So then all they needed was someone to serve, but we were able to cook it all because they essentially lost like 80% of their workforce because their workforce was high risk to come in during the pandemic.
Wow. And you do a tremendous amount of work with, in New York City Harvest, I feel like you've done plenty with, and No Kid Hungry, Share Strength, No Kid Hungry on a national level, and probably plenty more. But you just rattled off some awesome organizations, including your own. Are there any, kind of want to let you shed light on an organization or fund that you want to raise awareness for, or want listeners to hear about? Or
there's so many. I mean, I do a lot of things with autism because I have a couple friends whose kids are on the spectrum, and I learn more about it consistently. And, I think whenever, and there's a lot of autism foundations. I think they all do great work. I also think the Vetri Foundation does an incredible job working on lunch programs and meals for kids and things of that nature. I think he's spectacular at that. And then, a school that we try to do a lot with at home that isn't a quote unquote charity, but is urban community schools in Cleveland, Ohio, where, they take a lot of inner city kids that really wouldn't have the opportunity to get the education that they're getting. And 85% of the kids are going to college. And so that's another program that we like to do a lot of work with.
Awesome. I want to do a quick speed round and then we could close out.
Yeah.
What did you have for dinner last night?
What did I have for dinner last night? Pappardelle bolognese. Cold. I made it the day before. I ate it cold out of the bowl.
Amazing. Name a smell in the kitchen you love.
Searing meat.
Name a smell in the kitchen you hate.
Rotting fruit.
Earlier we talked about what pisses you off or frustrates you in the kitchen, but what makes you happy in the kitchen?
People.
And last tattoo you got?
Oh gosh, I've got a new one for about 15 years. The last one that I've got is across my stomach. It's written in AC/DC letters, except it's mine and Liz's initials, MSLS, with the lightning bolt in between.
Do you need Liz's permission to get tattoos?
No, she's given up a long time ago. It kind of, we met 30 years ago. I already had, I started getting tattoos at a young age, much to my parents' chagrin. So I was already started to be a little bit of a covered canvas even back in those days. And her dad and brother are both bikers, so she's seen her share of tattoos.
Got it. All right, so for I don't know, how many seasons was the Chew? 7, 8 seasons?
7 seasons, 1,450 episodes.
I mean, that was one of the biggest cooking shows, quite frankly, daytime TV. What do you miss most about that? And what's a guy got to do to get a reboot or something?
You know what? I miss the people. We had 200 people worked on that show. Very few changed over the course of those 7 years. So in addition to, laughing my ass off with Clinton Kelly on a daily basis and all the other hosts, the people that worked on the show, the cameramen, the kitchen crew, the all the people that make a show possible. I miss those people. They become family after, you spend 4 days a week with them for 7 years. So, that's definitely what I miss the most.
All right. So you've done, when I was digging into research and, whatnot that I do for these, it's so many books, so many shows, every freaking accolade for restaurants. Is there anything in the culinary world that you'd like to do that you haven't done yet?
I love teaching. It's really what I enjoy doing the most. It's even when we were doing the pandemic shows, I love that. I love teaching. I love teaching people how to cook. So I think and then with my granddaughter now, she's 2 and I'm very excited. She loves to eat. Anything I make her, she eats, which I love. But I can't wait till she could start to cook. So I think I want to continue to look at teaching younger kids, especially, I think, how to cook and appreciate food, and maybe ones that don't have some of the opportunities that I've been lucky enough to have when it comes with food. And because I think both, not only as a trade, but just as the ability to put a great meal on the table for yourself and your family is I think a special thing. So, moving on as I get a little bit older, it's I don't have this huge desire to open more restaurants or all these restaurants, that kind of stuff. But I do always have a really burning desire to teach people how to cook.
Yeah. That's awesome. All right, let's close it out with the Cleveland Browns won the Super Bowl and want a celebratory team dinner. What are you making?
Whatever they want. Literally, whatever they want. I don't care if it happens and like Baker calls me up and says, I don't care what it is. I got it. You name
Consider it done.
I got it. Done.
Awesome. Well, thanks, dude. I appreciate you taking the time to do this. An hour is a lot of time in the wonderful world of Chef Michael Symon. So thank you for all you do, the smiles you bring to people's faces, your charitable work, your community work. It's incredible. So
I like what I do. I'm very lucky to be for 25 to 30 years of my life. I haven't felt like I worked a single day. So I'm a lucky guy.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks again to Chef Michael Symon. Find more on him at michaelsymon.com. And to learn more about the Michael D. Symon Foundation, go to michaelsymon.com/foundation. Find me and keep up to date with this podcast across all social media platforms at On Cappy's Plate, or go to beyondtheplatepodcast.com. Beyond the Plate is on all of the socials at BT Plate Podcast. This episode was produced by myself, along with Ian Cohen, Joel Yetton, and Sean Petrosian. Thank you to Sarah McClellan for her digital media savviness. Our music has been composed by Goldford. Find him at iGoldford. As always, special shout out to my wife Katie for proofreading everything I hand to her, probably at the last minute. My bad. Please rate, review, and or subscribe to this podcast on your listening site of choice. Join us this Friday for our second episode of Beyond the Drink, a little companion podcast, if you will. This one's made possible with the help of our friends at Deep Eddy Vodka. We'll be talking with a beverage pro out of Austin, Texas, who created one of the greatest cocktails I've had in the past year. Thank you for listening to Beyond the Plate. I'm Cappy, and remember, there are never too many cooks in the kitchen.